What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to episode 11 of the Max Manus Pod. Really appreciate you guys checking out today's episode. Today's episode was one I've been wanting to do for a long time. Jake, Talkin Jake, Jake Storyally, whatever you want to call him, my boss at Jomboy Media. That man can, simply put, I think when you spend a lot of time in the media industry and just consuming podcasts and listening to people talk into microphones as much as I do, you gain a greater appreciation for people who are truly just talented at like exactly what I just said, just sitting and talking to a microphone for hours on end, because it is a skill and it's something that I think it's hard to pinpoint a lot of people who do it better than Jake. When it comes to baseball, the amount that you could just wake that dude up in the middle of the night and ask him what's up with the A's in the last 10 days and he would have an answer for you. And not a lot of people can do that as well as him. So it was an awesome episode. We talked some baseball, some Yankees, but a lot about Jake's personal story and kind of his life before he did this whole baseball media thing, because he says it, people don't even realize that there was like a real world Jake who worked a real world job out there for a little while before he did this. So it was interesting to get his perspective on somebody who kind of came into baseball in the later years of their career instead of being like a lot of my other guests have been athletes or writers or whatever it is, who knew from a pretty early age or a pretty early point, like, baseball's what I'm doing and this is going to be a goal. And Jake has a much more unconventional route. So I really appreciated how much he opened up about that. We talked about the MLB deal with Jomboy Media. We talked a lot about kind of just the growing pains of running a sports media company and how things have evolved over the years, how the Aaron Boone interviews have evolved over the years, how the different types of content that Jimmy and Jake focus on, they've been able to kind of cater to the way they watch and appreciate baseball more over the years and some of the challenges that came with that. I think it was an awesome conversation. Pumped for you guys to check it out. We did have to battle the tech monster for a little bit in the middle there. So those of you who are watching carefully and think, I feel like Jake was recording on his computer for most of the podcast and then just switched to his phone, you would be correct. I think the audio and all that should be all good, but it might sound a little different. But regardless, you guys are the best. Really appreciate you guys checking out the episode as always. Got a hell of a lot more coming soon, so stay tuned. You guys rock. Without further ado, let's get into the episode. What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Max Manus Pod. Today's guest is someone who is not only my boss, but someone who sometimes when I have people come on, like if it's an athlete or somebody who's maybe not so familiar with the podcast world, you got to give a little background about, this is podcasting, this is how this works. But today's guest can hop on a podcast mic and talk sports with the best of them. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. Jake, thank you for joining us today.
Max, what is up, brother? Yeah, I'm juiced up, man. I was laughing this morning, just think. Well, A, we've been talking about doing this for a little bit. B, I already did A. B, I'm excited to blow brother Jeff Passan's numbers out of the water.
Hell yeah.
Michael K, though, the GOAT, I don't know. Max, I can't promise you those kind of numbies, but dude, I'm also, this is that weird. A couple years ago, we decided like, hey, Christmas to New Year's, let's take it off. Like, what are we doing? We work hard as a company. It's a pretty dead time of the year. That this is currently the only podcast on my schedule, and I'm excited. And I don't know if it's going to show up in the screen, but I'm just realizing I spelled my name wrong when I joined the web thing to do this. So that's on me. But yeah, dude. And Max, you've seen a lot of the ride, but also like you've changed a lot as a human. And like the company has turned into such a thing that, yeah, I'm interested to get some of your perspective on it and yuck it up with you, dude. Because, in a normal week, we get 3.5 conversations by BBD's desk or by Jim's desk over there. So yeah, I'm excited to yuck.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who have never seen the inside of the Jomboy Media office, there's probably some things that would be a little bit of a surprise to them, but I don't think it would be a surprise to them in any way, shape, or form. That anytime there's like downtime or just not too much going on, waiting to record, it's usually just a bunch of Yankees fans huddled around a table somewhere being like, all right, well, who's the third baseman out there that we're not thinking of that some team's trying to flip? Or, who's the bullpen arm that Matt Blake's going to try to tap into this year? So, Jake, I'll start you off with a question that I like to start off all our guests with. Why do you love baseball, Jake Story Alley?
Goes back to day one, man. I was kind of raised into a baseball home. Dad, big Yankees baseball guy / Bernie Williams. That's inside for those who know. Yeah, man, it's I guess at its core, the thing that a lot of people talk about, the fact that anyone can do it, whether you're Altuve or Betances, like there is something special about that, in the NBA, that ain't how it works. In the NFL, you can survive with some different body types, but not fully. And then, baseball, Jose Altuve is going to be a Hall of Famer. Jose Ramirez, I decided this year I'm going to be a Jose Ramirez, like a guardian of the wall, little pun there. Because, dude, I think he has been so overshadowed by Altuve between play, scandal, World Series, everything. Jose Ramirez is 5'8", and he's doing stuff that no one has ever done. So I got a little lost there, but I also, the beauty of baseball, the conversation of baseball, the breathing of it. I was nervous about the pitch clock. I was like, ooh, I don't know, man. And especially those 23 Yankees where innings were over like that. I was kind of against the pitch clock for a little bit because part of the game is the silly stuff and the conversations and getting lost in it. I was also, if we're being real, it's the Max Manus Pod. Subscribe. Dude, I was good at baseball as a kid, and then that went away. But
we've seen those pics. Those pics will make it on Jake's Instagram story like once a month.
Every now and then, you got to remind him a little bit. It turns out I grew up in a pretty small town, but I was the 1-1 pick every year in Little League. So I mean that feels pretty cool as a kid when like your friends' parents are coming up to you and you're like, you were the first pick, and it's like, oh shit, I'm short. Oh, sorry for swearing, Max.
It's all good. Passan tossed a couple of those in there too. So
he always does. What's that about?
He always does. Love slipping them in there. But yeah, I think one of the reasons I was especially excited to have you on is I think one of the ways you're different from a lot of the other guests that I've had on is I've had on a lot of like players and journalists and stuff like that who they're all, from the moment I was, 10 years old, I knew I was going to be in baseball. I knew I was going to be this. I knew I was going to be that. You kind of took an unconventional route, if we want to call it that. So I want to give you the floor because I'm not sure how much like the diehard JM fans who listen to the pods, like I'm sure they've heard you do the full 9 yards before, but I'm not sure how much a lot of people know that there was like a whole other Jake Story Alley life before this whole baseball thing started.
I told someone the other day I did 7 years in the quote unquote real world of electrical supply and distribution, from management training program to inside sales to marketing. For 7 years I was just a guy in khakis, like replying to emails sometimes, surviving. I was definitely. I think a lot of people I don't know. It's a different age for everyone, but I especially think your late 20s, you have a realization in life that, like, what am I doing? What really is this? That, not to go heavy life, but it's also, it's not even that. It's more so just like career and stuff. Like once you have a certain skill set or you've worked in a workplace for a little bit, you're like, okay, then I can probably do that in a lot of workplaces. And it's also, doing is sometimes the best way to find out that it's like, okay, well, I'm actually good at this, and this. I've done this. I thought I was going to like doing this at work. I was definitely doing some of that at my other job. And I was just very, as you well know, I'm a pretty silly person in nature, that I was like, that side of me can never fully be in a workplace. That I was always like, hey, because hard work I'm kind of into. Like, let's get a job done. I'm about it. Like, that's one of my strengths. Doing work I don't want to do is, my God, I still struggle with it today. I was doing that. I was kind of spinning in life a little bit. What do I want to do? Jimmy had reached out to me. He had just started tweeting online about the Yankees because he was living in California at the time, and he had nobody to talk about the Yanks, so he just went to Twitter in 2017. He got literally a couple thousand followers. It was like 2,000 or 3,000, and then he was just, and he still does it to this day, and sometimes it still blows my mind, but he used to reply to every DM and every message. Up until like he had probably 100K followers, and then it got overwhelming. which the fact he made it that far is wild. But, the people were like, hey, dude, we'd love to hear you have a podcast. So I think he did 3 on his own. And then he reached out to me because he was just talking to himself, which that's in the sports, whether it's podcasts or shows or media, talking about yourself, that is hard. Like, if you're not a Colin Cowherd fan, like, you kind of should respect him. Like, the amount that man can just talk into a mic and make it conversational, it's mind-blowing. As people know, sometimes I go into tangents. But even with Wake and Jake, having BBD there, having to have that bounce off when you need it, like going solo, it's literally just you. He was like, hey, do a podcast with me. We'll talk about the Yankees, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, sure. Worst case scenario, I was like, end of the day, I'll look back and be like, hey, once a week, me and my best buddy used to talk for an hour. Because that's the other part of the life thing when I'm talking about the career stuff earlier, that, you're starting to look at life differently, that I'm like, what? Am I going to look back at spending an hour a week talking to my best friend and look at that in a bad way? No. I'll end up, worst case, laughing at it, or we'll dig one up. Knowing Jimmy, he'll show one to me at my 70th birthday, and we'll end up laughing at it. So then once a week, things were starting to get just a little bit of momentum, and I was starting to mix it up on Twitter. I forget when once a week turned to twice a week. And then I think that offseason, Jimmy went like full time, got like a little bit of investor money, not a lot. But Jimmy was very lost. He was editing like weddings and high school mixtapes of like lacrosse and stuff like that just to like pay the bills. But his passion wasn't there, and that's when it all started to click for him. He had been doing video and editing stuff for years, just like casually. His passion was the Yankees. So he went for it. A couple months later, I got fired from my job, partially rightfully so. I could throw a challenge flag if I wanted to. Our 2 companies came together. There was 2 of us for one role. The other company took over. Whatever. Congratulations, Whitney.
Shout out Whitney.
Shout out Whitney. I hope she's doing well. For about I was probably about 4 months there, and this is my signature story. I've told too much, but I was applying to jobs because I was like, we're like a year away. Like, I was living in a nice apartment building, like, I was eating meals out, and like, I was living a certain lifestyle that I had enjoyed, that I wasn't ready to go back to like making zero money. That I was like, it's a year away. So every day I'd get a little workout in, apply to jobs, and then we'd do whatever Talkin Yank stuff. From there, my signature story, Cliff Bar. I really liked Cliff Bars at the time, and they had a marketing job in the region that was like doing events, and I'm good at events, like as you've seen a little bit of, Max. Like,
yeah.
I like people, and it's just like, it's a task. It's like, okay, we're going to be set up at this event from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. Buckle up, get ready for it. But when it's done, it's done. Like, I kind of like that. I applied to Cliff Bar. After I sent in the application, Cliff Bar is spelt with 1 F, and I spelt it with 2 throughout. And that's when I realized I didn't care. I did not care. Like, the first job that I was kind of like, yeah, like, maybe this is going to be cool. I didn't care enough to double check how to spell Cliff Bar. So that was a big realization for me, that I cared so much about the Yankees stuff that it was like, hey, talk to Jim. I was like, hey, I don't know what you can do money-wise, what we can do money-wise at all, but I'm ready. Like, I want to go for it. My other signature story is I used to charge Bird and Lime scooters every night. Because we wanted to cover the Yankees. So I didn't want to be working a bartending job where if the Stanton trade broke, I was behind a bar for the next 5 hours. So literally I needed as much flexibility as possible. So I'd go out at night, I'd charge 4 or 5 scooters for $5 a pop. End of the week, I'd hope to get $100 or so bucks out of that. And then, it was survival mode that We rode out that part of the season. We hit the first off season where it was like, what the heck do we do? So we started doing JJR every day, and we started just trying other stuff. Fast forward, things started going viral. We started selling shirts. It was becoming a very real thing. There was definitely a couple months there where I was running out of money for sure. Borrowed some money from a friend and stuff. But then things kind of started to go that, we ended up getting the office. We got a real investment. We got an office, or a semi-real investment. We got the office in the Bronx. COVID hit. Scary. No sports. We just hired people. What the
good
heck?
Timing.
Crazy timing, but it ended up being, you don't want to say good, but baseball was the first sport back. We ended up crushing that season. Our investors were stoked because of every company in the world, we did okay, and everyone else did horrible because of COVID. And so then we ran it back for another year. We did really good numbers. We got the big investment. We got the big office in the Bronx. We started hiring like crazy, probably too much. And now we've been in Manhattan for, 3-4 years now, and we've got a decent-sized company that is a very real company, and that's one of the funnier ones that still happens. That I still get like, are you guys like full time? It's like, yeah, man, we're a 60-person company.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I feel you talked about how like your natural disposition is kind of just being like a goofy, silly, fun-loving guy. But I feel like because of that, like we don't get to like see this side of you that often, where it's like kind of like serious reflection and like, damn, like there was some real stuff there for a few years. It's interesting because you talk about kind of having that like moment of reckoning where you were like, wait, like I hate all these other jobs and I really like this, so I'm really gonna do this. Where my version of that was like, all Jewish high school on the Upper West Side. Jimmy came and spoke my senior year to the baseball club. Some people don't know that. Fun fact. That's kind of the origin story of how this started. But like I remember being like, I don't know if it was sophomore year, junior year, but whenever like people are starting to apply to colleges, and you can imagine like Jewish high school in New York City, there's not a lot of kids that want to go into like the baseball world. But to me, I was just like, like I'm a baseball dork. This is all I ever talk about. This is all I ever want to do. Like in my head, it like didn't compute the like, all my other friends who were like massive sports fans, and every day at lunch we're sitting around talking about like, I remember there was one year that it was like Jerks and Profar in spring training. It was like everybody was like, the Rangers want to dump Jerks and Profar, and we got into like a very, very animated debate over Jerks and Profar. I don't know why that one sticks out, but like that's the type of conversations we're having at the lunch table every day, you know? And I remember we had this like one big day where like the college counselors are talking about like, this process is starting and you got to think about what kind of degree you want to apply for. What do you want to study? And we're sitting at the lunch table the next day and all my friends are like, I don't know, maybe like doctor, lawyer, that type of stuff. And I was sitting there and I was like, we all love this. Like in my head, I was like, not every single one of you guys wants to just become like Brian Hoke or Jack Curry in 20 years. Like I thought we were all in this together. And that was a real moment for me where I kind of took a step back and I was like, oh, this whole, like, I think I recognized very early on that there's like a happiness currency in a lot of things. And no matter how much money or prestige or whatever you could get from one of those other, jobs, which is like, great, go for it, knock yourself out. For me, there was something about just like going every day and doing something in a job that's not something I genuinely love and genuinely enjoy spending my time doing, that I'm just like, I can't do it. Like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm just not going to commit my life to doing that. But I guess when you look at all those years that you just told me, when you look back to 2018, charging Lime scooters, and waiting for Yankees news to break, fast forward to end of 2025, is there anything that you like, I guess, miss about being like a quote unquote regular baseball fan who kind of stumbled into this media career? Like, how does the way you follow and evaluate baseball and just watch, like when you watch a regular baseball game, how different is it now than it was 7-8 years ago?
Yeah, I think there's two different things. There's life before Jomboy Media, where I don't know if I was missing a Yankee game, it was just kind of like a shrug. Like, life was happening. That it was like, it's living in Denver. It's like, I'm going for a hike today. I'm sorry I'm missing the 1 p.m. Twins game. Little jab at them always. And then once we started doing this, it was just such a grind and pressure and want that, like, I don't know, it wasn't really a question. That I think it's just, now that it's here, I do think it's funny because, the beat writers used to have a slightly jaded reputation, for lack of a better way to put it. That, it's a grind. As we've talked to players, like, you'd be surprised how many players that still want to play baseball, but they don't want to travel or be away from their families for 8 months. I remember we were talking to a guy at the time. He was on the Mariners, and he was like, dude, the travel is horrific. And the person had been a longtime MLB veteran, and they were still good, but they were just like, dude, I don't want to do this anymore. And then the one baseball player I consider a true friend is Cole Tucker. And Cole, I remember I saw him last year. He did our cricket tournament with us, and he just had his second kid, so he was like first kid, second kid on the way. He was doing a cricket tournament with us. Blah, blah, blah. He always has a lot of stuff going on, and I was like, dude, is it, second kid on the way? I was like, is this kind of like, are you feeling like this is your final hurrah? Like he was doing so much stuff that I was like, it feels kind of like you're getting ready to, bunker down and raise 2 kids for 8 years. Like, and he was like, dude, he's like, I feel like free for the first time. He's like, this is my first summer.
Yeah,
and
it's crazy.
That's something that I want that to resonate with people, that, like, if you're ever judging your baseball players, know that they've never had a summer up until this point of their life, whether you're 40-year-old, Scherzer, or whether you're a 30 or 28-year-old player. All they've done is play baseball. That being said, wandered pretty far away from myself. Yankees, it is what it is. Like, we're so intertwined with the Yankees and the Yankees culture at this point that I'm gonna watch. I watch every game pretty much live. If there is something that comes up, I can watch a game recap or go through some Talkin Yanks tweets, and I can round up. And luckily, we have built up enough with our audience that I can say, dude, that Friday night game, my nephew had a play, so I was checking in, but I wasn't locked in. So, like, Jim, what do you got? So it's cool that we've built that up. I think on baseball as a whole, it's something I'm still wrestling because, talking baseball, we're like the #1 baseball show. That I definitely feel pressure where it's sometimes you're talking about a guy in the Reds bullpen, and it's like, well, he's been, he had a perfect July, and you're like, I've seen him throw 2 pitches. So, like, how much can I really comment on that guy? So that is still a juggle I'm working on, and I will quote the great Chris Rose, because I remember when early on, we were struggling with talking baseball. We're like, how do we consume all of this? How do we get this out properly? And again, we found our voice with it, and we're in a good spot, but you're still always trying to figure out how to get better. And we're like, Chris Rose, like, what's one of your, like, secrets? And he's like, well, I watch the games. Like, Chris Rose's main living room during baseball season, he has like 4 games up, and like that's kind of the secret. It's crazy.
Yeah, I think this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before a little bit too, that when, like, I'm sure the same way that you got like, oh, are you guys full time? Like, there's a lot of things that when I talk to people who like really, maybe sports fans, but like don't know a lot about like the inner workings of the sports industry, there's kind of this inherent assumption that it's like, because you're working what a lot of people would consider a dream job, that like it doesn't feel like work or it's not a grind. And I think that's one of the things you realize very quickly when you enter this world is like, nobody who works in sports for the most part is doing it for the luxurious paycheck or the great hours or anything like that. Like, everybody who works in sports is doing it because they love it. And like, guess what? Sports is always going to be played at nights, on the weekends, on the holidays. Like, that's never ever going to change. And you kind of have to, again, I understand how to a lot of outsiders that get to be like, these guys get to cover baseball and they're complaining about their, and sure, like, and any job has complaints like that. But I think that a lot of people, it doesn't like click for them that it's like, it's still a grind. It's still really, really hard to do. There's still parts of your job that like, if I was, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, like, you know, you just have to watch the Yankee game for work. Like, that's your job. That's what you would be doing anyways. And it's like, that has like a morsel of truth to it. Like, I'm not going to act like that's an insane statement, but like, people don't realize you got to be in it. And we're not even doing a lot of the traveling and stuff like that you talked a lot about, whether it's players or writers, or a lot of them do. But especially when you're doing like baseball, that it's, you know, like you said, 8 months out of the year, spring training, all that. It's like, you got to lock in. It's not just going to come easy to you.
Yeah, or that, you know, that vacation you booked to wherever that happens to be during a Red Sox series, and you know that's okay. Well, that's kind of prime time for us. So how are we? But I don't know if we can do that. Or your beat reporter that, you know, ask how their 4th of July is, because they're probably at the stadium or wherever the game is. That, yeah, it's how could someone else appreciate that? But that's, you know, you could say that kind of about anyone's job. That, yeah, it's sports and there's a ton of cool stuff, and that's where I end up. My conversation I end up laughing at is like, you know, especially the outside world is only supposed to see us do the fun, cool stuff that, you know, Max, you see it. Like I end up in a lot of like meetings that it's like, what is going on?
People would not realize how many like actual business meetings take place at Jomboy Media.
That is, you know, I signed up to do a once a week Yankees podcast. Like I didn't sign up to do meetings. But no, it's, yeah, it's like any job. It has its pluses and its minuses. Its pluses are pretty damn cool, and that's the reason we like to do it.
Yeah, you touched on this a little bit when you were saying like in the early Talkin Baseball days, like it was tough. You know, there's a reason that not a lot of people cover baseball like nationally. Like there's a reason that not a lot of people cover all 30 teams in depth, because it's really, really hard to do. And I think one thing that's been interesting to me to kind of like see in person working in the walls, that I wonder if people like realize this from the outside too, is that you and Jimmy follow baseball in like very different ways a lot of the time. Like I think there's a reason, like it makes a lot of sense that you ended up focusing a lot more on like the Talkin Baseball type stuff, and it's a lot more like, hey, you know, if you woke Jimmy up and shook him in the middle of the night and just said, how have the Cincinnati Reds been doing in the last week? Like, he might not know for you. I think that's the way you follow it. But I think the way, you could probably say it better than I could, but Jimmy's a lot more interested in kind of like stories and interesting people and interesting, whether it's like rule changes, like that's the type of stuff that Jimmy nerds out about. Like really anything that encompasses a breakdown, I think is fair to say that like, when you work with Jimmy, it's very easy to see why that's the way that his mind works. So I guess, given that you and Jimmy follow baseball in very different ways like that, how did you guys kind of figure out like, this is the type of content I'm going to focus on, this is the type of content he's going to focus on, this is the type of stuff that we can do together, it's better that I focus on more of this and less of this, whereas for him it should be the other way around? Like, how did you guys just, I guess, figure out who should focus on what type of content and how to turn that into a strength?
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's still it's like everyday learnings. I know that feels like a little bit of a cop out, but yeah, we're still figuring it out, man. That like, yes, I think me and Jimmy both had to. Because we were almost too opposite. Like I'm the old school ESPN Sports Center that they used to show they used to show a minute from every game, and like that's what I loved. Like I loved seeing every team. It's like, oh, Jeff Conine went 3 for 4 with the Marlins, and okay, what's going? Ooh, Sean Burrows had a night. Like I used to love that. Like I would love getting informed on every team, which in a way is kind of ironic because me being like super informed isn't my brand, but it's also, I think that's something that me and Jimmy found. Like if Jimmy's going to talk about something, he doesn't want to not be informed on it. Like he wants to, and not that he needs to be the smartest guy in the room, but he needs to have his thoughts on it. He needs to have his, his process of understanding with it. And that's where Talkin Baseball came brutal for him, because he was like, what? We're going to talk about all these teams? Like we need a better system. And for me, I'm kind of, give me the spark notes. I can process it, and then I can talk about it in a way. And that was also one of the Talkin Baseball wins was, hey, you guys know your team better than us. I'm not watching every game. Like, that, again, I normally use relievers as the example because, my God, even at the end of the year, there's relievers pop up that had amazing seasons that I never heard of. Dude, there's a dude in St. Louis's bullpen who had an amazing year. Didn't know his name till the end of the year because St. Louis was just kind of out of it. I'm going to have to look him up because, I was blown away. Fangraphs, Cardinals.
Get in the lab.
But, dude, we were struggling for a couple years there because then Jimmy was just straight up running out of time. He was like, hey, if we keep doing Talkin Baseball this way, I can't do it. It's too much in the way I need to talk about baseball. It can't happen. And then it became a little bit of like a back and forth because yes, it's, for Talkin Baseball, if we put Ohtani in the thumbnail or we put Judge in the thumbnail, that episode's going to do pretty well. The thing that I struggled with, and I think we've landed in a really good place with, is that we kind of, I guess, weird Jake brain here.
Go for it.
If we continued to cover the games, we had unlimited ammo. Like, throughout the summer, if we're covering the series, we're always good. Because that's just it. It constantly refills. If people want to listen to us talk about that, we're good forever. So for me, that was a big thing. I definitely also realized that, hey, if you have a good topic, you got to talk about it, especially in sports. When it's there, you got to go get it. Maybe the best example across JM this year was when expansion talk started. I had a massive Wake and Jake episode. There was a massive Talkin Baseball. Jimmy had a massive breakdown that week, that topic, absolutely. Outside of that week, not so much. I do want to do something fun with Jolly and Foolish and make them do an expansion draft or something. That would be a lot of fun. Which, again, if we do that right, that can be an evergreen anytime type of episode. But, in that moment, so Jimmy was running out of time. We really want to keep talking about the games. And so Jimmy was kind of well, I've got to tap out. He was doing the midweek episodes because we were doing topics. And then he was still running out of time. That we wanted Jimmy, my guy, Trev and Jimmy, that's their main point of contact, unless it's Warehouse, that I know they've been missing each other. We, at one point, I think it was the beginning of 24, we tried to go fully topical for 3 episodes a week. The audience didn't like it, and, not to be rude to baseball, but there's not enough big topics every week. Every week. I remember we did the first month, and we looked back, and there was one real topic, I forget what it was, that, again, you got over here's unlimited ammo. We can roll this. Yes, we have to get a better system, and I still think we can get better. I've still wanted to do something hey, 4 series, a recap. We're just not talking about them. These series are either what you expected or there was nothing big, or even just a 2-minute segment that it's hey, we're going to bang out all of these. They're not big enough for us to talk about, and we want to feel knowledgeable enough. It does. Sometimes we still step into a landmine, and that feels bad. And it's, whether it's, that game-winning double turns out it went off a guy's glove, and you don't know that, and you don't talk about that, and you're damn, I spoke about that thing pretty wrong. You're oh, the reliever can't give that up. And it's well, if the outfielder turned his glove the other way, he didn't. So, yes, I think Jimmy's come closer back, by the way, of he definitely, I think there was a little bit, he was okay, the Reds had a good June. Who cares? That I think that was Jimmy like 3 years ago. That now he's on the pulse a little more. I think he definitely values like the whole encompassing thing. And I've had to come back a little bit that it's like, oh, the Rays starters had the third best ERA in June, and it's like not everyone cares, and it might not affect the season. That for this show and getting it to the people, it's finding that balance, and we're still hunting for it, man, because it's just so much that you just want to speak about it the right way. And again, I think getting to where we've gotten, there's been during the season, Monday, Fridays, we do recap episodes. That if there is a topic or like a massive trade, we scrap it now, because like, the Devers trade. I don't remember what day it happened, but it's a perfect example of like, hey, if we're about to record Friday and the Devers trade happened Thursday night, do 20 minutes on the Devers trade, figure out the rest of the episode, because that's what people want to hear about. So again, that was like a big learning for us, because it's like, well, can we do that? And it's like, yes, that's what people want to hear.
How, shifting to Talkin Yanks a little bit with that mindset, I want to talk about the Boone interviews a little bit, because I've kind of had like a bit of a front row seat to that, just doing like Talkin Yanks, like sitting in on the episodes when you guys speak to them and then handling all the clips and stuff like that afterwards. And a lot of the times when I'll go back and watch some of those clips from 2023 and when you're first starting out, it's there's like definitely some similarities, but it's a little bit jarring just realizing like, oh, like you guys kind of all had to find your footing. Like, I don't even think it's like one person or anything was at fault. I think it's just like, hey, this idea of a manager of a really big sports team hopping on a podcast and talking with some podcast hosts once a week about why they blew the game last night wasn't something that had really like existed a whole ton in the sports world until then. It was usually WFAN or ESPN or wherever, where the manager or coach does their weekly spot. And I think that was something that like kind of everybody had to figure out, like, how do we navigate this? So I guess, like kind of how did you and Jimmy navigate that? And like when you look at the way you handled it 1 year ago, 2 years ago, how different is that from the way you go about it today?
The first thing I start with, and maybe this is corny, but dude, credit to Boone. Like you've seen a little bit of the behind the scenes. Like he steps into the arena and he's willing to dance. Whether it's me going full silly, whether it's Jimmy going full stats, whether if it's us being like, dude, like I realize you have to do a little bit of a dance, but come on, Booney, that. Boone has signed up for it, and every week he brings it. There's never, last week we got into a little yelling match. Like, it's never that. Like he signs up for the 20 to 30 minutes, and let's see what you boys got. And I'll do me, you guys do you. We'll see where we land. So the fact he does that is really cool. The path of it, I mean, 2023 getting the first, the Yankees' worst season in 30 years. It was really challenging, man. I mean, there was days when we don't want to be old school WFAN, Mike and the Mad Dog, scream at you, blah, blah, blah. But that season, it's okay. We're interviewing Boone today. Yanks are 1-5 since we last talked. What do you do? What do you do? So that's where I think it was good for us, because we had to, it kind of, in a way, helped us build a better rapport with Boone moving forward, because that was, like, the nastiest of it, that it was like, okay, it's got to be better than this. And, yeah, man, there was some days me and Jimmy, like, looked at each other like, you don't want to say dread, because, again, we, like, appreciative of the opportunity, but it's like, we're going to have to, like, kind of yell at the manager of the Yankees for 20 minutes. Like, that's neither of our personalities. So, yeah, that 2023 season, it was really challenging. And I guess process-wise, usually the night before we'd send over a couple questions, and it's like, okay, definitely, or no, or he's going to dodge that, or, is there more there, or how do we want to approach that? 2024 was kind of the opposite. The Yankees, go to the World Series, and it's Judge and Soto that, like, having the 2023 season behind us, And like any relationship, building up trust and, just getting to know each other more. Like, Booney now can kind of tell if Jimmy's got one in the chamber ready to go. Watch out. He also knows, he can chirp back at me a little bit and I can handle it. And I'll chirp back a little jab on the way out just to make sure he knows I'm not going to just be a punching bag. That, it's become really, really fun. And I think we've, I guess the other thing to any of our people that, don't go outside or interact with humans anymore, like our few in-person interactions with Boone have also elevated things, just like having real conversations and, Boone without a mic in front of him, you get some more real stuff. And, us without a mic in front of us, you get a little bit more real stuff. And also not like, inner workings of the Yankees, but just silly stuff. One of my favorite things, we did a live show with Boone, I think summer of 24. We had, where was that? That was at that,
it was like in
golf
Midtown
simulator.
somewhere.
Yeah. So we had like a behind the scenes room. So it was like me, Jimmy, and maybe Joe's was back there, but we were hanging out waiting for Boone. And he comes in and, Jimmy hits him with the firm handshake. Booney, how you doing? I put out the handshake. Again, I can't believe this is something I appreciate, but I truly do. He hit me with the handshake finger tickle.
Oh, you were talking about this at I won't spoil it. We talked about it on
but
recently, so go for
that it really made me laugh, and it's like it just humanizes a guy, and that's what when you're watching the Yankees and he presses the wrong bullpen button and you just say, screw this guy, how can you be doing this? I look at the guy that hit me with a finger tickle. So yes, like a lot of the Boone conversations, sometimes we feel too close to the sun on. But yeah, it's been building that relationship, and all of the stuff, trust, and knowing that, hey, if you say something, I don't know if we've ever had to edit anything out, but if he said something that he didn't want in there, he knows that we wouldn't be like running to the press with it or anything. Like we're trying to be fair. We are Yankee fans. And that's something that I always drive home, that I was, if I ever need to, I'm like, Booney, if the Eagles did this, your response would be this.
Yeah.
We are Yankee fans. This is what we're doing. And I guess the only other closing note, when it first got announced, this is a lame sports comparison, but it's how my brain works. I remember we went to a Yankees game and we got like media passes, so we were there. And it was just funny, man, when they were like, you guys are going to be interviewing Boone every week, huh? And it was very much like, it was almost like we were the young third baseman that was, they just announced was going to get the starting job for 2 weeks. And it's like, this is what you wanted. Let's see.
Yeah.
Let's see. And it's honestly, it honestly all around has been awesome, just from press standpoint, and giving us a little more respect of like, we're not just two dudes screaming in a basement, screw the Yanks, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, we're Yankee fans with a twist that care.
Is it ever tough? I guess this can kind of be asked about like the fact that you guys have relationships with players as a whole, but I'm thinking of it specifically in like the Boone vein. Does that ever make it tough to kind of fight off those like creeping thoughts when you're doing the podcast of like, I don't want to go too hard on the Yanks because maybe Boone will see it and I don't want to piss him off? Or whether it's like a player like, there's always, it's something that I struggle with a lot, of wanting to strike that balance of like, you got to be objective at a certain point. Like, nobody's going to listen. Right. Nobody's going to follow you if everything you say is just everybody's great, because I don't want to piss anyone off and criticize them. But at a certain point, like one of the things we always say at Jomboy Media is don't burn a bridge that isn't built yet. Like, you don't want to just go slander somebody endlessly when they could be somebody that you have no idea how they could help you out down the road. And then they take 2 seconds to go on Twitter and say, oh, this guy, slandered me 3 years ago, I'm not going to talk to him. Was that something that, like, is that a tougher balance to kind of strike when you work with Boone to the extent that you guys do now?
Yeah, it's again, this is a little corny. It's still it's an evolving process that we're still figuring it out, as our relationship has changed from being from being just podcast to being on Yes Network to talking to Boone. I think with Boone, it's easy because, dude, manager stuff is manager stuff. Like I don't know, twice a month they hit a wrong bullpen button or they don't pinch hit a guy, and we sit there as fans and what the heck are you doing? But it's literally every team. And as you well know about the Yankees and most teams, like, it's not just Boone. It's a lot of the organization and like the game plan and everything. That there's few and far between times that like I'm mad at Boone. And if I am, like, it has to be something that I'm willing to say to him. And luckily we have the platform that, I think our first fight was the Yankees offense stunk, that I wanted him to bring the infield in to cut off a run in the 8th or 9th inning. And he basically, you don't know, balled me. Like he kind of hit me with, when you're the manager, you can make those kind of decisions or whatever. And like, again, like I was willing to talk about that because I realized there's some numbers there, but those numbers weren't taking into the fact that your offense was buns. Like, if you let in that tying run, you're probably going to lose the game because your offense had nothing. So for Boone, you have to be willing to say that. Players, it's still tricky. You kind of can't think about it. I think there was a little bit where we were thinking about it, and me and Jimmy were like, damn, like, I don't know. End of the day, you got to be Yankee fans and say what you want to say. And like, I think especially, Jimmy doesn't care. Like I about like being friends with the players. Like, I don't know. That's not really how it works. Especially as we're getting older and stuff. Like, that I think, Jimmy likes making fun of that Joe's could be Dominguez's dad, basically. That, like, it's not exactly, there's not a lot of buddy stuff for them. But at the same time, you want to be respectful. The internet is what it is, that, we could say 10 good quotes about a player, but then the one bad quote, that's the one that gets to them. And it's like, well, that is what it is. That, I don't know. I guess for myself, if I'm not willing to actually say it to the player, then should I really be saying it on the pod? I don't know. I still juggle that a little bit. And yeah, I guess the example, but hey, we're doing it, and it's no shade at the guy, but I think 2023, Trevino was the starting catcher. And he came into the office one day. Dude, crazy day at our office. I think it was like Memorial Day.
Yeah, that was a fun day.
Nobody was kind of there. So it was just cleared out. Trevino was bopping around. We had like a hockey stick and a net in the office. And he grew up playing like street hockey. So he was just shooting shots in the office, like just yucking baseball. Jimmy with a catcher is just a dangerous formula. That it was awesome. Like, Trevino was just like hanging out, which we were like, damn, like, it was kind of like, is this the next step? Like, players are going to like actually like us. And then 2023 continued and the Yankees were brutal. Yeah, like Trevino, I forget if I think we were like DMing with him and stuff regularly, and then he kind of like stopped responding, and then we kind of got word that the guys like didn't like how we were talking about the team, and we're like, all right, well, that's tough, but you're also, what do you want us to say? The team looks great, like, so that was for us just a big realization, like, hey, you kind of got to say what you're feeling. You're not going to be best buds with the whole Yankees roster, and that's fine, and that's never been the goal. But yeah, and dude, it just makes sense. Like, if you're a sports team, it's kind of you versus the world. That yeah, I think it's an interesting progression as it goes. But yeah, I get where they're coming from, man.
Yeah, Jake, you've given me a ton of your time. One or two more.
Yeah.
Really, really do appreciate
Come
it.
on.
I'm curious, thinking back to some of the early Jomboy Media Bronx office days when you said it was like a little bit pre-COVID, a little post-COVID. You guys are going super heavy with the hiring. I joined like January 2021, and I was still in Israel for like another 4 or 5 months. Then I came to the office in like June, and I remember getting there for the first time and meeting like Dan Rourke and BBD and Kyle and all these guys. and I was starting to put together like what are the different things that these guys are looking for, the different traits they're looking for in the people that they want to build their company with. So I guess still when you hire people now, but especially at the early stages, were there certain qualities that you guys were looking for, or like certain specific things that you were like, we really need this out of the people that we want to build the company with?
Yeah, I mean, I think we were kind of looking for people we were familiar with. I mean, BBD was, Jimmy used to go live on Periscope, and BBD was the Periscope monitor or whatever it was. Um, I forget Kyle. I forget the initial link up there. Um, and then Dan Rourke. I mean, we initially kind of didn't want to hired Dan just because we had seen him being a little bit of Dan on the internet, and he was, Dan was kind of doing content, and we didn't need content. We needed help. And I remember, I think Kyle was like, I can make him be just like me, and we were like, okay. We talked to Dan a couple times, and he was Dan Rourke, and in the best way possible because he's an amazing creature. Um, that we At first, I think we were scared, or at least I was scared to hire people that were like fans of ours, because I was like, that's a good way to start a cult. That I was like, I don't know about that. But I mean, the truth of it was the people that were, I don't want to say fans, but involved or about it, they care. And like, that's when it comes to any job, that is so much of it. Like, if you care, you just treat it differently. That as we went, if people understood our vibe and like what we were doing, that was a big part of it. And then from there, it's at the end of the day, it's getting the job done. So whether that's um if we hire someone to be an editor, we need you to be an editor. Like, if we hire someone to do socials, we need you to crush that. That yeah I As things have grown, if people are familiar with our world, it helps. But also, jobs are getting so, I don't know, like when we're hiring a head of sales, like you kind of need someone with a different resume. It doesn't matter if they used to listen to laughs from the past. So like, um, no, we early on it was just kind of, I mean, it was also, the applications weren't as deep as they're coming in now, that it was like, oh, okay, like I kind of know them. And then it was, real but not real interviews of like, are you gonna fit A, are you gonna fit in, and B, can you get the job done? That was kind of it.
Yeah, it's funny because whatever, nowadays when I have a million friends or people that just DM me or whatever saying like, "Oh, how can I work for Jomboy Media? How do you get your foot in the door?" And I always say like, I got the job because I knew Jimmy through Twitter and he had come to speak to my high school and he hired me over Twitter TM, and I was probably the single last person hired at Jomboy Media who could get hired through that
Yeah.
capacity. Like, you'd be surprised, it's an actual company now. There's real hiring, there's like HR, it's
Yeah.
legit.
Yeah.
um so I guess let's wrap up with this because I think this is something that a lot of people are probably going to want to hear about. The MLB deal, that was something that was in the works for a little while, and you can speak to it way more than I can, but our relationship with MLB has gone through some ups and downs over the years. Like, it wasn't always smooth sailing. So I guess when you look at the entirety of our relationship with MLB and just where we're at now, I guess, what do you think it says about Jomboy Media and about MLB and kind of just the state of sports media as a whole, that was a really landmark deal? Like, I'm not sure that people who are outside of the sports world really understand like just how new of an idea that was for a pro sports league to be going into business really with independent content creators.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still the only company that a league has actually invested in that capacity. So, that, like, that part is genuinely wild. Like, from a business perspective, like, that part is wild. Um, yeah, man. I mean, dude, depending how far the story wants to go back, you can go back 6 years, you can go back 2 years, you can go back that, as we were getting bigger, MLB was around us. And yeah, sometimes in a good way, sometimes in a not good way. That for us, as we got bigger, luckily we got involved with some people involved in different ways with MLB that I don't know, it was something that was on the forefront, but also, we had to operate that like it would never happen. Like, that again, because like we're just saying,
It
it's a
hadn't.
one of one, right? Where we're still a one of one that we were like, okay, that we just have to operate this way and we'll see what happens down the road. But we are Jomboy Media and we'll do our thing and we'll see what happens. Um, that I think there was a point probably, at this point it was probably 2 years ago that we started talking to some truly high up people at MLB that were kind of having the conversation that we always thought should happen. And once that started rolling and once the seed was kind of planted, it was like, okay, now it's back in our heads. It would just make life a lot easier for us that I for MLB events, the All Star Game, the World Series, um, MLB wouldn't be friendly with us. They had no incentive to. They actually probably had more incentive to not be. Um, that now that the deal's done, it's just we're in the club, like we're family. That we end up laughing sometimes now that the places we get hooked up at, we're just like, wow, this is just so night and day. And yeah, man, I mean, maybe this is, again, people don't know lame corporate Jake that much, but like MLB deserves some credit. Like we're saying that's a one of one deal. Like they could still keep us out of the club and that would be the standard. That like I think, and some of this is just opinion. That's why I said I think. MLB had to look in the mirror a couple years ago and be like, what's going on? Like, why isn't because MLB numbers wise was still in the ballpark and they're doing better, but like, MLB didn't have a cool factor to it that the NBA had, and NFL is just in a whole nother world. But I guess NBA is where you should be looking. Like baseball was America's pastime. Football happened and it's football and it's a behemoth and it's you gotta let it ride. But I think basketball was the interesting one that it just took over and it was, I mean, sure, you go MJ to LeBron to um basketball itself just is cool. I love basketball. But I think the biggest thing was like basketball highlights took over social media. Like you saw every sick dunk, you saw every ridiculous Curry three, where baseball for years they had restricted that. In 2016, if you posted a Trout home run, they would take down your Twitter account. So they just took an opposite approach that who knows what conversations fully happened, but at some point I think the same people that had decided to go one direction with baseball media had to kind of look in the mirror and say like it's not working. And also, how are these little guys figuring out how to do what we would dream of views wise for baseball and stuff like that? um that again, hey, we've worked really hard and we deserve a lot of what we've gotten. But baseball was, they were the people that had to come around. Like it's, not just me and Jimmy like begging them or trying to persuade them. Like no, they had to be like, okay, do we want this? And they had to say yes internally to that. That yeah, I mean, when the documentary comes out, there's nothing in the works, people. That's just a Jake phrase. Like there's whole other tangents and side conversations of there were there were a couple meetings that felt like a bad episode of Succession. And it was just like, what is going on here? But it was all kind of part of the process that got us there. That, yeah, as you kind of know, like we when it happened, we didn't have like a full game plan. It wasn't like, all right, let's do this, this, and this. Like we needed it to get done for us to even dream about doing this, this, and this, which I think people will see. Um, World Baseball Classic, because that is an MLB sanctioned event. And like now that we're in the club with that, like we're gonna have all our creators at so many games. We're gonna be able to cover the games in such a big way that I think that'll be our first example of like what's changed. Like the way we'll be able to handle that is going to be really cool.
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm just counting down the days. I
Yeah.
feel like not a lot of people are. I feel like it was 3 years is just long enough that people are forgetting like just how sick the last one was and like just
Yeah.
how big of a deal it was for baseball on a global stage. And I think this next one's even just gonna blow it out of the water. So yeah,
Yeah, you gotta check the timeline boxes. Like people need to report to spring training, and then once that initial serotonin boost, and then you start looking at that Dominican team lineup, and then you start looking at the U.S. and Japan. Like that's gonna be sick.
yeah, it's gonna be awesome. Jake, this was awesome. I really appreciate you. I feel like it felt like a trip down memory lane for me a little bit. Like
Yeah.
I kind of went back to being like 17-year-old kid in high school classes, just scrolling Talkin Yanks Twitter, scrolling like, oh, what's Jake saying today? And I said this to you when we were at the A-Rod doc a few weeks back, that we were at this A-Rod doc premiere that HBO invited us to. Thank you very much, HBO. And you and Joe's walked into the after party and kind of just looked at each other. We were like, this is not a place any of us like
Yeah.
truly belong, but in a way we do now, which is very cool. But that was also one of those moments where I just turned to you and I was like, dude, 4 years ago I was like a high school kid that just wanted to work in baseball, and now we go to the coat check and put our coats up, and A-Rod is just standing there waiting to shake our hand.
Did
Like,
you
hi,
big
Alex.
time A-Rod? Did you big time A-Rod? People are asking.
So a lot of people are asking. Joe's and I, fun story, behind the scenes story for people that don't know. Joe's and I, like, on the way out, we headed out a little before you did, and Joe's and A-Rod, like, actually know each other, which is
Yeah.
crazy. So Joe's goes up to him and, like, daps him up and says, thanks for having us. And A-Rod, like, calls over his manager, who I think is also his cousin, just whatever, his cousin who handles stuff for him. And he was just like, yo, this is my boy. Anything he ever wants, you better let him know that it's getting taken care of. Like, I don't want to ever hear he asked for something and you didn't hear it. And I look over at Joe's and he kind of just looked like he was floating for a second. Like he couldn't like fully mentally comprehend that this was Alex Rodriguez in front of him saying that. And yeah, that night as a whole was kind of just take a step back and realize like, hey, it's a little insane how we got here, and the road, we took the less traveled road maybe, but it all works out in the end, right?
Yeah, man. The A-Rod Joe's connection, that'll be I still don't know what to do with that. But the fact we're even talking about that is insane.
Awesome. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Jake, thank you so much for
Yes.
your time. Really, really appreciate it.
No problem, Max. Let's go Yanks, brother.